the cloud, so it does go onto our playlist. So thank you for your patience. Let's go ahead and get started then. My name is Jody Hammer, and I am the Career Services Specialist here at NPCA's Global Reentry Program. So I have the distinct privilege of working with you all, talented RPCVs, evacuees, the whole group, the whole gamut, and working with you on career and transitional assistance. So whether you just got back, as some of you, the evacuees, or you've been back for years, such as, I'm forgetting the name of the person that had indicated she's been back for quite some time and are looking to change careers. We're here for you. And these webinars that I put on, are for you all, as well as the podcast that we do, Jobs with Jody podcast. So we invite you to take advantage of any and all of those that you're interested in, okay? So wonderful. Tonight we're going to talk about mock interviewing and tips and practice. So I'm going to go through some slides and share some content. But the goal of this session is to finish early so that we have enough time to have you all do one or two questions of a mock interview. So I asked folks at the very beginning when they were waiting for this session to start to write down, maybe one or two of their questions they most dread in an interview, so that we can practice together. Because believe me, by practicing and getting external feedback, it's going to help you get a lot more comfortable with the whole concept. Okay. So you all have already heard, I'm sure, the 4 pillars that we are. I'm just going to have this slide here. I work in the career services area, almost exclusively, really, with the career job search assistance, that kind of thing. But there are some different pillars of our program, such as education, well-being, and the continued service, that are also important. And we're really rolling them out slowly as well. So first, I want to talk really briefly about what mock interviewing is, right? It's really an opportunity for you to practice your interviewing, right? Practice your skills in an environment where you can get feedback and you can then feel more comfortable, right? It simulates an actual interview, and it allows you to feel, more familiar with how an interview will go. Usually you'll feel maybe more, less stressed, right? But you also get to know more about etiquette for interviewing, what types of things to say and to not say, and you can review yourself as well, because if you recorded it, you can actually, review, well, how did you look when you said that? Or if it was just an audio, how did you sound on answering these questions? Oh, were you saying a lot, or other filler words? Things like that are really important. So there's a lot of benefits to mock interview, as I was starting to say already, reducing anxiety, just making you more familiar with how it's going to go generally. Now, there are always, differences to some degree, but in general, interviews are pretty standard, right? So it helps you to feel better about that, as well as to practice those common questions. And I want you to practice, and I want you to practice with me tonight, and I want you to go out and practice after this. But what I don't want you to do is memorize the answer or write it down, a script, and then, oh yeah, I can memorize it, and that way I'll say exactly what I want to say. That is not what you want to do, and here's why. If you get it all thrown, you're completely baffled. But it also, even if you have it so memorized, it sounds scripted, and that is not what you want an interview to sound. You want it to sound like you are just being extemporaneously, articulate in your responses. That's going to do a lot more for you, because remember, the interview is about you and choosing you as the candidate, and which candidate's going to fit best in the organization. You've already passed the okay, resume, this kind of experience, but the interview is really where that's what really gets you the job, right? You have to have a strong resume, a cover letter, all of that to get to the interview, but the interview is really what's going to get you that job. So you can also review, like I said, body language if recorded, looking at, how you're presenting yourself. Now, the reality today is, and we're going to talk about this, the virtual, right? The virtual versus online, and you can definitely get a lot of feedback too on how you are virtually present, and that we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But first, with whom can you interview? With whom can you do a mock interview? The answer is a lot of different people. You can do it with mentors, right? People that you find from your network or that you know already, right? And you can do it with global reentry, me. I'm happy to do a mock interview with you if you would like. You can reach out to me. I can't do one for every job that you have, but if you are struggling to prepare or you think it would help you for a job, the kind of advice and insight that I'll share with you can certainly be applied for your future interviews as well. So past supervisors are great, right? Maybe you've really stayed in touch. I know some of my past supervisors have really stayed mentors of mine, and oftentimes they are hiring officials, and that's great if you have somebody who's a hiring official, right? Even better. They know the tips and practices of interviewing. But even on your own, I mean, I always recommend, yes, try to do the ones with other people. But in addition, or, worst case scenario, definitely doing it on your own if you record yourself. And that's so easy to do today, right? You can go on, do a free Zoom, and you can record it. And you can watch it afterwards, and you can watch your body language. You can watch your eye contact. You can observe so much about yourself. And let's face it, right now, most of the interviews are virtual, right? So we've got to get used to that whole virtual thing. But I just did a webinar on virtual interviewing I think it was last Friday. And you'll be able to see that, of course, on our, I'll try to plug that into my follow-up for you all. But it'll be on our global reentry playlist, on YouTube under, the NPCA YouTube channel. And we talked about how virtual things, yes, it's very much that way now, but it's also predicted to stay that way largely because that trend was already starting before coronavirus hit, right? Before COVID-19. So, and the reasons for it is it saves money for both, right? It's advantageous for both the employee, prospective employee, I should say, and the employer. And so, yeah, I always say if you have the opportunity to do an in-person one and you can do it, I would absolutely recommend you do that. But it's certainly fine to do the virtual as well when that's necessary, especially with technology now and the camera and all of that. So that's who you can do it with, in-person or virtual, the pros and cons, right, of each. This is true for mock interviews as well as actual interviews, right? So the in-person has the advantage of, there's nothing like that human contact, right? Where it's face-to-face. You can usually read body language best that way. It's the most intimate type of interview. So I would definitely say, like I said, choose the in-person if you can when possible, but virtual is, definitely a growing one and in popularity, and it's fine. There's some things you need to, the pros and cons. The pros of the virtual, of course, is that you don't have to pay to get there or whatever and worry about maybe an unfamiliar area to try to get there and map it, make sure you're on time. You're right there in the comfort of your home. Which can definitely be a pro, but it can also be a con, especially if you have pets that might make noise in the background. I'm sure many of you have seen the, Zoom bombings of pets and all of that that's happened. So you want to be careful of those kinds of things too, that you can have, so that you can have a very quiet, uninterrupted space to do, those virtual interviews, right? But it's easiest, like I said, it's probably easiest to connect when you're actually in person. But if you're doing the virtual, you need to really try to have good quote unquote eye contact. And that is not by looking at the icons. Because if I'm looking now at the icon, I'm looking at Edward's icon. And if I'm looking at him and think I'm giving eye contact to him, the reality is I'm looking off to the side. So try to look at the camera, and you could even put a little note next to it saying smile, or keep the focus on that. And you want to be really genuine in your tone and expressive. You got to step it up a little bit to have it come across in more of that virtual arena. And that smile helps, just every once in a while, kind of smiling, not only with your lips, but with your eyes, even when you're stressing certain things. Okay. So, but they're both great. So sample interview questions in general, right? You have, the tell us about yourself and why you're interested in this position. And I put that in parentheses because even if they don't ask it, if they don't ask the and why you're interested, I highly encourage you to include that at the end. So, you tell a little bit about yourself And that's why I'm so interested in this opportunity. It seems a perfect fit for me given my 3 years of specialized experience in and proven commitment to blah, 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 your mission, whatever it is, right? You're going to, you want to tack that on the end. That's really a strong way to show them, I'm interested. This is I'm not just interviewing because I need a job, whatever. I'm really interested in this opportunity. It can really sell them on you as that like top candidate. Okay. Now, the fact that you've made it to the interview stage means you're generally within the top, 2 or 3 people, right? For this job, maybe 4, right? Sometimes they interview even 5, but still, you have made it through that whole application process, the resume screen, all of that to get to this point. So you know right now that you are among the top candidates, right? So you've just got to be able to show them why you're, so qualified and a great fit. Okay. So how did you learn about this position is another opportunity. They might ask, right? They sometimes will ask how you learned about the position. Well, it's great if you were referred by somebody. Maybe you were referred by somebody who works there. Wonderful. That's a great, and even if they don't ask that question, you might want to include that into your tell us about yourself answer to say, that's why I was thrilled to hear from your current employee, Brandon, blah, blah, about this opportunity. It's like, so they can go and talk to him about you if they want to get like a, reference, or if they know, they oftentimes feel more confident in going with somebody who has some kind of a contact, right? And that's only because it's a known entity more, right? It's a really big risk doing a hire, hiring somebody, right? A new employee. It's a huge risk because they could quit in 3 months or less. They could not be the right fit. So it's like there's a lot. So if they had any kind of inside information that this person seems to be a great whatever, that could be really helpful for them on bringing you on. Okay. And back to when we talk about tell us about yourself and why interested, I did cover that end part. For the first part, there's different ways to answer that, right? And I'm going to send you an example of another approach. But I definitely recommend, this is not your chance to like tell your life story, right? You're keeping it fairly succinct and pretty much focused on your work life and how it has prepared you for this job and why this is a logical transition or why you're so excited about it, that type of thing, right? Now, you certainly could say a sentence or two about where you came from, right? And as I said in the video one that I just did, the video interview one, you certainly could, say, something like, in my case, I was born and raised in the Midwest, got my undergraduate degree at the University of Northern Iowa before entering the blah, blah, blah fields and like going into like more of what I did professionally, in San Francisco and Peace Corps and whatever, and going through that more. It was really more focused on my, work experience, right? But it's fine to say something like that. What you don't want to say is, I was born in Minnesota, and at the age of 7, my family relocated to Iowa. Nobody cares about that, right? Now, telling about where you're from could be great in terms of if there's somebody on the interview panel that is from wherever, you could weave in, the fact that you're from that area. That's great. That's kind of a connection thing, but you certainly wouldn't go into your whole life story, right? Great. So let's go on. Why are you interested in this position? That's a common question, and a lot of people are not prepared for it. A lot of people struggle with this question, and I'm not sure even why. I mean, I guess I feel like if you are interviewing for the job and if you're interested in that position, what is it about that position that draws it to you? Why is it a natural progression for you coming from where you are going into this job? That's the link you want to kind of establish for them, right? So that's really all that one is about, right? And they want to know that you're interested, right? So definitely include that, like I said. Why are you looking to leave your current job? Now, for some of you, if you're coming back from, if you're an evacuee and you're just looking at what's next, you could certainly spin that as, well, I actually, the decision was made for me to begin looking, because Peace Corps was globally evacuated due to COVID-19, and all 7,000 volunteers were returned to the States. We all returned to the States and are looking at what's next. Why I'm interested in, you could go that, like what, then you could go more into that spinning of the why you're interested in this opportunity, and you're looking, you've made the decision to continue with your career in XYZ, and you're passionate about this position because of its, whatever, and making that connection. Okay. So hopefully that's going to help. I do want to ask if we have any questions here. Let's see here real quick. I don't think we have any questions coming up yet, but if we do, please put your questions in the chat box. I'm happy to take those as well. Okay, great. So behavioral interview questions are a bit different, right? They are the kinds of questions that are not easily answered with yes or no. These are ones that you're going to have to basically either prove or expand more on why or what, or telling that story, right? So a lot of times I think of behavioral questions as, what a classic behavioral question, right, is tell me about a time you used your fill in the blank skill to, in a work environment or something like that. So they drop in whatever those skills are they're most looking for. When they put those kinds of questions out there, it's because that's the kind of skills that's required for that job. So you want to make sure that you come back with a strong answer, right? And be able to, prove that this is something, right? So for example, these ones here, describe a time you were faced with a stressful situation and you demonstrated your coping skills, right? You would preface, and I have a slide that's actually going to come up on prefacing for behavioral questions, and we're going to come back to this screen here in a little bit, because I'm going to go over the rest of these and possibly ask some of these questions to you, to those of you who don't have your own question that you want to practice, and we can go from there, right? So I do have a screen on behavioral later as well. So, but give me a specific example of a time you had to conform to a pulky with which you did not agree with. Yeah, like a policy, sorry. my screen has it. Give me a specific time of example of a time you had to conform to a policy with which you did not agree. Now, sometimes this question will be worded, tell me about a time you disagree with the policy and what you did. They'll leave it more open-ended for you to say, well, I just didn't follow it, or whatever. You don't want to say that, right? Why? You don't want to be that, I'm just going to break the rules, I'm going to do my own thing. You want to be careful about those kinds of things, right? So these are all just sample behavioral questions that we can definitely come back to at the end as well. But I want you to see this. Behavioral interview tips. So you want to use specific examples, right? You don't just want to say, oh, I have great project management skills, I've always had them, and just I would look forward to using them in this position. No, you want to prove that you have them. Give those examples of times you've used your project management skills and strong project management skills to bring a difficult project to fruition, or something like that. You want to definitely prove it more, right? An example that clearly illustrates, right, that behavior that they're looking for. Okay. And then, of course, using like recent ones, you don't want to go back 20 years, but you definitely are going to use those behavioral kind of examples, to support that interview question, right? Now, I talked in my in my video interviewing one, and I think my acing the interview from a couple months ago, about the STAR methodology, right? So the STAR methodology, or SCAR methodology, some people use, it stands for what we have here: situation, task, action, and result. So the situation is more like, what's the context? Where were you working? What was the situation going on, right? The task is oftentimes more of the, wow, malnourishment. There was there was malnourishment in my village, and whatever. And so, like, the global malnourishment, and then the task, we needed to help the children, like increase in weight or whatever. And then that action. So what did you do? Did you collaborate with your counterpart agency to implement a weighing and feeding program? Whatever you did, right? And then our results. And that's really the kicker. A lot of people forget the results or the outcome. And it's great if it can be a number percentage, that's great. And resulting in a 23% increase in, whatever, skills, or decrease in malnourishment, whatever you can. But it's not always, it doesn't always have to be that, but talk about the results and how it was better, how your work contributed to the betterment of whatever situation, okay? And then, yeah, and so sticking to the facts here, yep, because follow-up questions, you don't want to lie, basically, right? You want to make sure that you're telling the truth. And because if they do, yeah, follow-up questions and things like that, they could, out you. You definitely don't want to come across as someone who's not being consistent with your answers or with your resume or things like that. So be really cognizant also of what version of your resume you use and how you presented yourself, so that that's not an issue. Okay. And here's what I was talking about, the situation, task, action, results, right? So, you listen to that question, you think about the event or the activity that proves that, and then you plan and organize, right? That's all done in 5 to 8 seconds is actually, that's a long time, right? Of silence, right? Like if we do that right now, that was 6 seconds. Not very long, but it certainly seems a long time, doesn't it? So yes, it is. You want to, a lot of times, to even help reduce the discomfort in that first part, what you can do is, answer, like when they say, give us an example of a time you used your, right, whatever skills. And when you're doing the situation, you could say, something like, well, certainly, I have X years of experience in whatever it is, right? Data analysis, most recently. So that's you prefacing what you're talking about and setting that context. So to some degree of even like that, it's bigger than, like, you're going to give one example, but you have more skills. You have more examples that you could give, is what I mean. So, and then that situation, when I was working in Peace Corps in Ecuador, and then whatever, you set the context of, in my village, there was, a high level of malnourishment, whatever it is, right? And then the task, what was the task upon you and or your counterpart, right? The actions you took together to resolve that or solve it or address it, and then the results. So that's really responding to how you respond to behavioral questions, okay? So we'll go back to some of those questions earlier as well when we do a little bit of the mock interviews. But let's go forward a little bit more. Top tips for answering the questions. As I was mentioning in the last screen, even preface your responses. Like I said, you agree. Certainly, I have 2 years of experience in that. You don't always want to say, sure, I have X years of experience, because that's going to sound really rehearsed. But other ways that you might say that is, of course, I've proven my commitment to, or I've proven my skills in, whatever, blah, 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 by, and then in various of, in each of my past work experience. One example to highlight here would be this, and then you go into that one example. It just helps them to know you have more than just what you're sharing right there. And it also fills a little bit of that space. When we talked just on the last screen about that 5 to 8 seconds, that can be so uncomfortable. It fills a little bit of that if you preface before you get into it. So great. Keeping your answers fairly succinct, right? No rambling, and watch, you don't want to do the whole TMI, but not so succinct where it's just a one line, yes, I have 8 years in da 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 da. You need to prove it a little bit more than that too, right? But you don't want it to go on and on. Quantify when possible, because let's face it, numbers prove things, right? Numbers make it sound more believable. That's why I tell people on resume writing all the time, use numbers when you can, incorporate those numbers, because that number makes it like, oh, 85, like he's not lying, like that, having a specific number makes it more believable. And then the eye contact, which if it's in person, of course, it's with the eye. And if it's on a virtual, then it's with the screen. So with actually not the screen, the camera, which is what's going to give you good eye contact with your folks. So just doing that, and you can do that 3 to 5 second like clasp, like eye clasp, where you just glance you know, or even just an eye shut, you know, shut your eyes quickly and come back up. It's not so hard to do it when you're in front of a camera, but when you're staring at somebody's eyes, that's a little hard, right? And that's why I think it's easier when there are 2 or 3 people on a panel. You can give most eye contact to the person who asked the question, but you could certainly include the others by just glancing, you know, either way, you know, to the others. They'll feel more included, and it will give you that lovely respite from the eye where you feel like you're staring. Okay, awesome. Okay, and I'm looking at my watch and making sure that we are having time for actually doing the mock ones. So this is just interviewing tip. Like I said, the prefacing the responses, I can't emphasize that enough. Just sets your context, right? Closing the interview, there's questions that you can ask in the end. So things about, and again, this is covered on the virtual one or on the regular, but you asking questions like where it shows that you've done your research, you've done your preparation. Don't ask dumb questions or questions that can be easily answered online, right? So where does your company all work? Right? You want to, you know, saying something like, I noticed in preparing for this interview, I noticed that your organization recently, da, 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 da. Can you tell me what the status of that? And, you know, something where it makes you look more vested. You're interested in the organization. You're following the organization, right? I like to ask what is your projected timeline for filling this, for making a decision, and what's next steps? What are your next steps in the hiring process? That can give you a lot of good information if you should worry or not, because it might be that they're not finishing first round interviews for 3 weeks. Then they'll let selected candidates know next steps. Well, you don't have to worry 1 week later when you haven't heard from them, right? So it gives you more insight. So I like that. And you can respond when they answer that question. You can respond with something, you know, like, well, great, that sounds wonderful. I look forward to hearing regarding next steps, or, you know, whatever. Okay. Let's see, in your mind, what's the most successful attribute or transferable skill, you know, that a successful candidate would have, right? You're asking them and then you're responding. You can respond to it. You know, you don't have to just get, okay, go on to the next question. A lot of times people rush through the questions, but it's really a dialogue, right? And so you're asking them that question to know, and then they say something and you're like, wow, that's great. I'm really thrilled to learn that, as I consider that one of my strongest skills and passion areas. I'd really welcome the chance to use my skills in this capacity, something like that, right? And then finally, the concerns question, which I'm going to go through very quickly here because I want to make sure there's some time for the mock interview, because you can watch my other one as well on this one. And that is, you know, now that you've had a chance to review my resume and visit with me in person, what, if any, concerns do you have about my candidacy? It turns the table on them, allows them to be in your hot seat for a moment. And a lot of times they're like, nothing. You're great. Well, great. Then you've just gotten them to say you're great. So you can respond with, wonderful. I'm really excited to hear that, and I look forward to hearing regarding next steps. Great. If they do have something, it allows you to address that in the moment, you know, and you always would come back with a thank you for your concern. I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'd like to reassure you, although I do not have a background in Trello per se, I have used various other, you know, project management software, and I'm confident that as a, you know, self-starter and whatever, I will take a self-tutorial and come to speed in no time. Something like that, right? Where you just show them that it's not going to be an issue, right? Okay, so yay, mock interview, practice and debrief. And I did notice there were a couple questions here, so I am going to, I saw something come up with some chat things, so let me get the chat box here. Okay. Would an appropriate question be, what is your proudest moment at this organization? Hannah, yes, I think that actually is a very interesting question. And I think it could produce some good feedback, informative feedback for you, right? To know what their organizational culture's like. I like that. That's a unique question too. It's not one that I hear a lot. So that's great. My screen, let's see. Okay. All right, so what other questions do you all have? I know, and we have such a small group that I think we can easily have people just take themselves off of mute if you have other questions, or if somebody's willing to demonstrate, if somebody's willing to now go and demonstrate, I would love, love, love that. Somebody first, like any of you, if you're interested in going first for this mock interview, what I'll do is I'll ask you, what question would you like to have me ask, right? And then I will ask you it and allow you to respond. And then afterwards, I'll give you some constructive feedback on, you know, what went well, what I liked, and what I might change to make it even more powerful. So that's how it usually goes. So is there anyone who's just itching to go first? You know, I know this is something that I'm sure is not the most common, wanting to go first, but is there anyone willing to go first for me? And I'm gonna put up the, yeah.
Yeah, if no one else wants to go first, I can go first.
Is that Hannah?
Yeah, sorry.
Great. No problem. That's great. Anyone else want to go before Hannah, or do we want to see Hannah do it? All right. All right. So Hannah, what is the question that you want me to ask you?
Well, I put in the chat box a little bit earlier. I really don't like answering the question, what is your greatest weakness?
Oh yeah. How many of you like answering that question? Anyone that likes answering it, just put your thumbs up. Yeah, I'm sure, right? Yeah, most people don't like that question. In fact, that is the #1 most dreaded question in an interview, is tell us about a weakness, right? So do you want to mock that one right now?
Yeah, I can try.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, and again, remember, and I'm going to be taking just a little note. I think my camera went off anyway, so and then we'll chat, you know, more about it. You know, you come out with whatever, you know, whatever you would say. So there's, you know, and then we'll go through and we'll chat it. We'll chat about it. Okay. All right. So Hannah, thanks for being here today. Blah 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 blah. So Hannah, tell me about your what is your biggest weakness, would you say, or what is a weakness of yours?
Sure. Thanks so much for asking. I think, you know, over these past few years, going from different careers and different experiences through education, I've had a great opportunity to learn a lot about myself and my strengths and weaknesses. And I think one of the weaknesses that I've struggled with in the past is vulnerability. You know, coming out of college, I felt like I had all the answers and I didn't need to go for other people for help and everything like that. And I was confident that I can do it myself. And obviously I've learned that going to other people, my coworkers, my superiors, my friends, is a great resource for me. And not only that, I'm able to, you know, get different perspectives and understand empathy and understand best how to handle a situation. So I think that I've really grown through my professional experience and been able to become
You just cut out.
a little bit more vulnerable. Oh, can you hear me now?
You're good. It's back.
Oh, I don't know where I got cut off. Sorry.
No, you were good. It came back in right away.
Okay.
So I've grown a bit more, you know, to be whatever about vulnerability. That's where it.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of continue on from there. Yep. So yeah, I think I've been able to grow in that way in my professional experience in these past few years, and been able to reach out to others for their professional advice and expertise in different situations.
Great. Wonderful. Hannah, that's awesome. How about a little a little applause for Hannah. Thank you. That was great, and I'm going to give you some feedback here. I think actually I want to ask though, does anyone else have any feedback first? Any of the rest of you who listened to it, what did you think? Just put your actually just unmute yourself and share, because we do have a pretty small group. And these are the 5 to 7 second uncomfortable silences that we're supposed to incorporate, because studies show that you need about 7 seconds for people to be willing to oftentimes share. So did anyone have any feedback? Bravo, says MW. What's your first name again?
Hi, it's Marcella.
Marcella, thank you. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, you did great. I took a few notes of kind of what you said, right? And that helps me to just debrief a little bit. Um, I really liked how I think vulnerability, that was actually, I think, um, a good one to give, and you broached it, you said it, you put the context in the past, you addressed how you've worked on it, how you've gotten better, and then you've made progress in that. You didn't say in the end, and I'm not vulnerable anymore, because if you had done that, you know what I could have done as the interviewer? I could have said, well, okay, then tell me about a weakness that still is a weakness. And then you're in that same situation. Oh crap, I have to,
Right, right.
right? So you didn't say like you were, complete, but you definitely showed how you grew a bit more, right? So what I wrote down more or less about what you said, you said, what I've learned going from different careers and great opportunities, with education, I've learned about myself that one of my weaknesses is, vulnerability. When I graduated or when I started, I felt I knew all the answers and didn't really need to, you know, um, go to others, for them. But what I learned, was the process of actually going to colleagues and friends to get more perspectives and, the benefit of this. And you went on, and I didn't get all of it, but, I've grown a bit more, past experience, really reaching out to others. Like you really did a good job of talking about how you worked on it, because the worst thing you can say is just, oh yeah, I'm really bad at just organization, that's my downfall, period, end of sentence, like nothing else, right? Or any vulnerability, whatever it is, and just leave it there. You want to you want to choose a weakness that's not intricately related to the job at hand, and then couch it in the past, talk about what you've done to get better and how you've improved, right? Which you did brilliantly, so thank you. You were a great person to go first. My one comment for you on making that even stronger, and like I said, it was good to begin with, great to begin with. In the very beginning, you started with your first sentence was, in going from different career to
I
career.
know, and as soon as I said that, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
that was a bad. Yeah,
because here's what that screamed at me. It was,
yeah,
oh no, she's going to be a job skipper.
yeah.
But you're not. And so just, phrase it, maybe when I first entered, the working world after finishing my undergrad or master's or whatever,
Mhm.
like you could certainly do that in a different way. Okay.
Thank you. And I actually have one more question for you, if that's okay,
Sure.
Jody.
Sure.
I feel like I always end my answers awkwardly, and then there's a pause while the interviewer doesn't know exactly when I'm finished. Do you know how to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you can do, when you get to the end, when you're like, so I'm really proud of the progress that I've made, and I'm cognizant of this and very proud of the progress I've made. Thanks. Or
Okay.
thanks, or just made. You just make a full stop, like, you know what I mean? Like, how did you end it in this one? I'm trying to remember the last words that you said. Last thing I
Mm-hmm.
wrote down was past experiences, reaching out to others, but that wasn't verbatim.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I
Yeah.
think yours, I mean, when you did it with me, I think you stopped it, and I just let it for a moment to make sure that you were done. But that's going to happen.
Okay.
They're not always going to just jump into that next question, because they don't want to like step over you if you're still saying something, whatever. But it's just that becoming more comfortable with that kind of silence as well, right? Just smiling and, being really genuine in your responses. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So let's see. So anyone else interested in going? Who would like to do a quick mock one? Anyone else? Oh, Marcella, you said, I once bombed on this one. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then also tell us about a workplace conflict and how you handled it. Oh yeah, those are two brilliant ones, right? Or not. So, Marcella, would you like to role play one of them?
Jody, I think she put in the chat that she had to leave.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, no problem. Can somebody else, is somebody else interested in role playing either one of those or one of your own? Brendan, Edward, are you, I know to see it went down like by 2 when we got to the to the let's practice, because people don't always feel comfortable with that. Are either of you Brendan or Edward willing to do a mock interview, just a question of your
Sure, I'm willing, and actually, probably one of the most challenging things for me is the fact that I don't know the question that's coming next. So if you want to choose one of those, just
Sure, sure. No, that's fine. And this is Edward, right? I don't have
correct.
my sorry, I don't have the little part showing. Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, that's fine. So I'll yeah, that's definitely. So let's so Edward, first before we get started in this one, what kinds of jobs are you applying for? Like what's your projected, what are you hoping to get?
Sure. So the things that are kind of on the agenda at this point have an application in at a graduate school, which is for a
Uh-huh.
PhD program, and that one does require an interview if I'm selected.
Okay.
I've also put in an application for Fulbright Award for a Fulbright Scholar position.
Nice.
That one requires an interview.
Yep.
And then in the short term, because Peace Corps hasn't invited us back to country yet, I
Right.
went ahead
I
and did some
know.
applications today for the COVID-19 Corps.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Great. Okay. Awesome. The reason I ask is that can give me a little bit more information on like knowing what kind of job you're interviewing for dictates the kind of questions that I would answer, right? That I would
sure,
ask. Like
absolutely.
if you were specifically going for one thing, where you see yourself in 5 years might be a good question. But in your case, not so much because you're debating between education and right and other things right now that are a little more short term probably. So maybe yeah, let me just, do you mind if we do maybe some behavioral question that I come up with, or
Sure, that's fine.
okay. All right, let me just see if there were any others in here. Um, okay. So Brandon, can you tell me about a time that you demonstrated your strong intercultural skills in a work environment?
Sure, Jody, that's a great question. And just to mention again, my name is Edward.
Oh, I'm sorry, Edward. It was that would be
No
good.
worries.
Yep, it was
Um,
you and Brendan that are still here. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So there have been actually a number of instances in the past. Selecting a single one is a little bit of a challenge, but I'll go with my most recent term of service in the Peace Corps. I was serving in the education sector in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And in addition to our primary projects inside of the university where I was working, I had some secondary projects out in the community. But because obviously I was very much from outside of the community, I was dealing with that sort of cross-cultural or intercultural
Mm-hmm.
navigation. And so one of the things that allowed me to get kind of a jump start on the entire situation was finding um, a liaison or an advocate within the community. In my case, I had what was called a counterpart at my university who was also familiar with the organization, the sports palace that I was trying to work with
Uh-huh.
outside of the university. And she was able to give me an introduction, and I felt that that gave me a foundation to begin building a relationship with the individuals inside of the sports palace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in general, for me, if I can get someone who can give me an introduction, it's a huge bonus for crossing those cultural boundaries. But then once I get inside, I'm also partial to observation before taking a lot of action. I like to learn about the communities, and the people from the communities that I'm working with.
Okay. Great. Okay, just writing down the final things here. Great. Good job. That was very nice. I liked it. I wrote down, I mean, I just kind of jotted what you kind of said, right? Which I think what you shared about having, you did a good job of very succinctly describing your experience, right? People sometimes get really caught up in their Peace Corps service. Well, I was assigned here, and I was supposed to be doing this, and da da da. You were very succinct about it, which was great. You don't need to go into the detail, right? And you said something about, in my most recent service in Peace Corps, da, 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 I had, a secondary project as well. You talked, you had that one little sentence about your primary, and then the secondary project dealing with, cross-cultural and allowed me to, jumpstart, blah, 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 like you you did a good job of kind of going through and talking about how the counterpart was able to give me that introduction to the sports palace, and and that how much that helps. And then, but you don't stop there, and when you got in, you really wanted to listen and hear, right? And that which I think you did a very good job in that. One thing I would say in terms of even making it even stronger is, and I know in the beginning you were prefacing when you said, I have a number of instances in the past. It's hard to choose one, right? You just might want to restructure how you say that part. Just make sure that the preface comes across as very strong. You might say, I have, you might say, I have a number of examples I could, or what in my X years of experience doing in cross whatever, in working in whatever environment. One example, or you said in my most recent service, that was really good how you went into that one. But just in terms of, there's a number of instances in my past, it's hard for me to choose. I just didn't know if that it's hard for me to choose kind of aspect, maybe instead just restructuring that first part, to say, something about, I've proven my strong cross-cultural experiences in each of my past job experiences. One example would be right? That's great. So good job.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Edward. Awesome. And then we have, it looks like Brendan, are you willing to take a swing at it? And I certainly understand if folks need to leave here. We're running just a little behind here on the tail end. But Brendan, if you are interested in doing a mock interview question, you can feed me the question, let me know, and I'll ask you that one and give you some concrete feedback on, honestly, how you.
Well, I'm speaking through Hannah's computer again, sorry.
No problem.
I have just hopped on to the whole interview process of following up questions, and I'm not exactly 100% ready for answering questions, I don't think. I was
No
hoping
problem.
just to listen and learn.
No problem. So tell me this. What's your most difficult, if you were to say, what's the interview question that I dread the most, other than the weakness question, which we've already talked about? What would you say?
It's either other behavioral questions, or if it's a question that involves very specific details. Before I was in education, I was a graphic designer, an in-house graphic designer, and I did a lot of technical work.
Yep.
With manufacturing and everything like that. And my background, it's been 3 years since I've been doing that, and like having those kinds of projects and talking about all the technicality stuff of like pulling up numbers and figures and how it worked and everything. And I'm not a person that's always good with remembering numbers in the first place. Yep. So that's something I struggle with, because if you say the wrong thing, it becomes kind of obvious. With, at least in the design field, if you're quoting things for, I don't know, media buys or something like that, it doesn't really, it sounds wrong if you get it wrong.
Right.
So that's the one thing I'm gonna have to, I struggle with, and I had to do a lot of homework and looking back on my past projects and everything like that, and try to study up.
Yep. I mean, that it sounds like maybe in your field, if you're going for those kind of number things, right, it can be, but that's one of the things that you can also talk about. Well, when you talk about your weaknesses, like if you're going for a number position, like a position where there are a lot of numbers and data and all of that, I wouldn't use as your weakness the number, right, remembering numbers, right? Yeah. But what you can do as well when you're talking about, I'm the kind of person that, I always carry my, notebook with me, my small notebook, to just take care, to make sure that I get the numbers straight, and I, keep, track of, or whatever. You could certainly, bring out those kinds of things.
That's good. I do carry, it used to carry a notebook at work with me just for that exact purpose.
Right, just to make sure, and it probably worked well, right?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
So good for you. You do something that works, and it helps you to do better. Great. So I want to give you an example, since you said like a behavioral interview question. If I were asked, tell us about a time where you experienced team conflict or conflict in a team environment and how you handled it, right? I might respond with, if it's a negative thing, you don't want to go, oh, I have a wealth of experience in conflict, because then that makes it sound like it maybe is you, right? That is the center of it. But you could instead say something like, you could say something like, certainly, one example would be when I was in graduate school and was doing a team project, and there were teams of 4 that were assigned by the professor. And my team of 4, we began doing what we needed to for the semester, and it was work that was very much, cumulative. There was a lot to do throughout the semester. And before too long, it became very apparent that one of the team members, was coming unprepared and didn't have anything, wasn't doing their share. And so here's how I addressed it. I called a team meeting, for everyone, just to check in to see, how is everyone doing? How are you feeling? What support do you need? And we come to find out when we did that the one individual had just lost her mother. Her mother had just passed away. And so of course she wasn't in a position to be spending excessive time doing research for, XYZ. So we redefined responsibilities, and each of the other 3 of us took on a greater role in the preparation, and we gave her a greater role in the presentation at the end of the semester to allow her the time she needed to do grieving and traveling back home to be with her family at this difficult time. Like, that's an example. I'm done, right? That's an example to behavioral question. And it's you talking about, here, when this happened, this is what I did, here's how I handle it, and the outcome. Oh, and what I should have said in the end there, and I didn't, to do the results. And I'm very proud to say we got an A on the entire project, and whatever, like talking about the results, right? And she was very appreciative, whatever. So that's just an example that I put out there for you. So great. So it sounds like everyone who wants to have gone has gone. So I think what we should do at this point is wrap it up. And if you do have additional questions, please reach out to me at careers@peacecorpsconnect.org. And I will send you some information as well, the follow-up information on this session that'll have some resources and links for you to explore at your leisure, okay? So thank you, everyone. Yes, and Hannah, absolutely, please contact me. You can reach me at careers@peacecorpsconnect.org, okay? Awesome. All right, so everyone, thank you so much for being here, and we will look forward to seeing you the next time. We do have several things coming up. We have this Friday, we're going to be talking about writing resumes that will make it past the ATS system is, I believe, the subject. And that's, the automatic tracking, applicant tracking system. So great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.